Alex Pereira is the biggest name in combat sports right now. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Paul. Today we're going to look at Poatan. We're going to look at some of the weapons he uses. More importantly, we're going to look at how he implements those weapons and how he's used them to make his way to the top of the sport. So the level of achievement in this guy's career is just ridiculous. 13 professional MMA fights. I believe 9 of those have taken place inside the UFC Octagon. There's been plenty of fighters over the years that have achieved the type of things that Pereira has achieved. I mean, he's not the first double champion. He's not the first champion who's been knocking people out. But the fact that he's done it so quickly, I think he's just ripping up the rule book on how things are meant to go when you cross over to MMA from a different combat sport. He's an outlier, he really is. And yeah, we can look at some of the techniques and stuff he uses, but first let's have a look at the level of achievement he has managed to get to. I mean, he's won UFC titles. Obviously, he won that middleweight belt, which he then went on and lost in a rematch to Adesanya. He is the light heavyweight champion. He's defended it twice. He's twice main evented at the iconic Madison Square Garden. He has also been the top of the bill at UFC 300, a massive flagship card for the promotion. When Conor McGregor pulled out of the International Fight Week card, UFC 303, he was the first guy they turned to. And the reason they're doing this, the reason they're chasing this guy and looking for him to bail them out of trouble, is that he delivers. There's plenty of champions out there that, they've had some historic moments in their careers, but time after time, Pereira has just delivered over and over. He is knocking people out. He's not TKOing people. He is knocking them flat on their ass and then finishing them. And some of the level of competition he's faced, particularly in the light heavyweight division, has been huge. His last 5 fights have been against guys who've either formerly been a champion or have gone on to win the belt like Sean Strickland did. He's beaten all 5 and he's finished 4 of them. You're not going to ask for better than that. He's really delivering on everything he promises. And this is why he is the biggest star in the game right now. So today we're going to look, as I said, we're going to look at his skill set, how he gets the job done. We're going to look at it in 3 different ways. Number 1, we're going to look at how he approaches fight, how he manages distance in those fights, what weapons he uses and why, and what he's looking for. Secondly, we're going to look at those calf kicks. He's become really well known as, the most dangerous calf kicker in the game. Perhaps in the history of the sport, who knows, but we're going to look at exactly how he implements them, when and where, and what he's looking for when he's going to when he's looking to implement them. And then thirdly, we're going to look at that famous left hook. This is the weapon he uses to finish almost all of his opponents. We're going to take a deep dive in all of those 3 segments of his game. Let's get into it. So first up, we're going to look at his distance management. Pereira is a fantastic fighter at fighting that long-range game. More so at middleweight, where he had a height and reach advantage on almost everybody. He's fighting a lot of guys these days at light heavyweight that kind of have similar height and reach, but he still plays the distance game better than those guys. The stance, first of all, he's very tall. He stands up very tall when he fights, and he is also very, very squared up. I was listening to a friend of mine, Chris Fields. He's a really well-renowned MMA coach here in Dublin, and he was talking about this recently on a podcast, and he was explaining how Pereira uses this very squared up stance to get a little more torque in his left hook. So if you look at his rear foot when he's in an orthodox stance, his right foot, the toes are almost pointing forward at his opponent as opposed to turned out. So this means that he doesn't have to rotate his body to recoil and then load that left hook. He can kind of throw it from where he stands. Now, it's a difficult thing for people to read sometimes, and what he also does is he keeps his guard slightly out in front, almost like a long guard, but also down a little, so those hands are coming from his chest level. Now, this can be something that a lot of fighters may not have faced before, so you can sometimes not see where those shots are coming from. From this position, he uses jabs very, very efficiently. The likes of jabs, kicks to the body, switch kicks, and those infamous calf kicks. He uses them all from that kickboxing range. And what he's always trying to do is he's trying to fill the space. So when you're standing at that range in front of him, you'll see fighters along the lines of a Jiří Procházka, who's a very similar height, very similar reach, but he doesn't throw things in a straight point A to point B type of fashion. He throws shots around the corner, over the top. He tries to deceive you and trick you into falling onto one of those weapons. but Pereira just filling the space in front of him, and Prochazka wasn't really able to get into the right range that he needed to make those shots effective. So he really takes charge of that sort of distance. He stays busy in that kickboxing distance, so he doesn't allow you to kind of just get inside and get into your rhythm and try to get your work done. He can really frustrate fighters in that way, and he does it very, very expertly. The jab in particular is a brilliant weapon for him. So it's very sharp, and as I said, he's coming from that kind of chest height, so sometimes it can take a little time for a fighter to get a read on where and when that jab is coming, and he's very crisp and clean with it. It snaps it out there. But what he also does is he mixes things up beautifully by jabbing to the body. Now that jab to the body is so effective in mixed martial arts. It almost acts like a down block in wrestling. There was a great moment where Yuri Prochazka was pressing forward and feinted the change in levels, and then when he went to actually shoot in on the hips, that jab came down and just caught him clean in his tracks. And it's a frustrating weapon. It just, as I said, it fills that space between you and your opponent, so it can deter a fighter from changing levels and shooting in on those hips. Really clever use of it. He also uses it a lot of the time to just bring an opponent's guard down or bring their posture slightly down. So then that left hook, that famous left hook that he uses, is coming in over the top later in the fight. This was done to great effect against Jamal Hill, but we'll come on to the left hook later. As I said, these punches and jabs and stuff, they're coming from that chest height. It makes them very difficult to read. He also uses the switch kicks to the body. That's a great weapon for him to use. We saw him use it to the head of Prochazka, who was, in my opinion, clearly already out from the shots he took at the end of the previous round at UFC 303. So it's a vicious weapon for him. It can finish a fight, but he uses it as a great deterrent for a fighter stepping forward. It's a very fast switch kick that he has. He really stamps to the floor and snaps that kick out, beautifully timed. The calf kicks as well from that kickboxing range. Because he is so squared up, he can pop those kicks out without much tell. So again, we'll come to the calf kicks a little later in the video. Very, very efficient, very effective, and he always looks so stoic and calm here because he's not winding up on these shots. This stance he uses, he's able to just touch those shots out there, and timing is perfect. Timing is everything in this game. He's very, very advanced, experienced in the striking game, so he knows when to throw those shots out. He's not coming out there throwing bombs in hope. He's really just, he's a step ahead of some of these guys that he's fighting in the striking realm. When fighters go into the open stance, southpaw v orthodox. So we've seen him face southpaws like Jamal Hill. We've seen him face the likes of Yuri Prochazka, who will step off into that southpaw stance and give him different problems to solve. He manages distance so well with his hand fighting. So the lead hand, he's constantly touching, engaging that lead hand. This is first of all to measure distance. So first things first, when he feels that hand is there, he knows that other weapons are also there for him. So if he can touch your hand, he can also throw that outside calf kick. So you won't see him miss a hell of a lot of these kicks. He's throwing them when he knows they're available to him. And in that open stance, of course, he can use his rear leg now to throw the kick to the body and also teeps to the body, because once he's measuring the distance with the hand fighting, he can find those kicks, he can find those shots. Other things he does with that lead hand fighting is he can measure a rhythm, and we saw against Jamal Hill how he constantly got Jamal to respond to his action. Every time he's reaching out, Jamal is then reaching out in turn to touch Alex's hand. Now when this happens in that split second, Jamal's hand is outstretched from his body. His chin is exposed, and what he can do is, he doesn't initially go for that left hook. He lets him cook for a little while. He'll touch the hand, and then on the next one, he'll dip underneath and throw the jab to the body. This was a pattern he did over and over again. So what that's doing is, it's bringing down the lead hand of Jamal Hill. Eventually, he changes tack. He comes in over the top with that lead left hook and closes the show. Beautiful work from Alex Pereira, but what he's doing is, he's setting it up all the time with the hand fighting. And whichever stance you're in, the hand fighting is very, very effective for him. Closed stance or open stance, orthodox or southpaw. He's always trying to frustrate his opponents. He's staying busy in those straight line channels, that space between him and his opponent. He's either hand fighting or throwing those straight shots. So he's making them frustrated because he's disrupting their rhythm. They're not getting a second or two to reset and think about their attack. So what they do is they get frustrated, they overcommit, and they step in. And that's where his counter striking comes in. But love it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Next up, let's move on to the calf kicks. So Alex Pereira, I don't think it's controversial to say he's probably the best calf kicker in the game right now, maybe of all time. As I said earlier, his squared up stance where his right hip, his far hip is not too far back, his right foot is not turned too far out. What this does is it allows him to throw that kick almost like he's just popping his leg out there. There's a lot less tell. If you see a standard fighter in a normal, maybe a slightly wider stance, a more bladed style stance, and he wants to throw a leg kick, he's got to really commit. He's got to rotate his body into it. He's got to turn his hip over for a standard leg kick. But when we're going to the calf, you don't need to throw as much hip rotation. Your upper body barely needs to move at all. You can keep your two hands up in front of you. You don't have to frame out in front. You can snap that kick out, and it's so short and sharp and quick that it can land before your opponent knows it's coming. A great example of this was when Ian Garry unleashed a load of these on Neil Magny earlier this year. Some beautiful work. But Alex does it brilliantly from this squared up stance. What he also does is against opponents that switch stances very regularly, like Jiří Procházka in the two fights that they had, he will time those kicks. So the moment you switch back from that southpaw position to orthodox, he is great at just letting you know that calf kick is there straight away. We saw it a couple of times during that fight where he'll calf kick the Procházka. Procházka will switch stances. He'll go for one on the outside on the other leg, and then when Procházka switches back, he'll get a calf kick straight away for his trouble. So he doesn't get a moment to really reset his feet and step inside. He's always having to step back out into kickboxing range, stay out of trouble, and try and find another way to get in on Alex Pereira. He times those calf kicks very, very well. If you watch here, he's always looking for that moment when you're heavy on that lead leg. Now you can't stay, it's difficult to stay very light on that lead leg all the way through in the way that a Muay Thai fighter will, because you're susceptible to takedowns. So you sort of have to distribute your weight. And fighters like Procházka, who stands with a very bladed stance, his lead foot is turned in a little. It's very difficult to check kicks here, but he also has that bouncy style. And there's those moments when he's bouncing, when he's absorbing his body weight onto the floor. That's when those calf kicks are coming. The timing by Pereira on these attacks are beautiful. And in the open stance, he uses that outside calf kick very, very well. It's just a deterrent to stop you switching stances, thinking you're safe. That's also coming. He can hand fight, throw that outside calf kick, get you to switch back, and then go back to work on the original leg, so you never really get a break. And thirdly, we are going to look at that left hook. This is his dynamite weapon. This is the one. This is money. This is the stuff that's been getting him those wins. He uses his long-range weapons to frustrate his opponents. As I said, he's filling the space, throwing shots. They get frustrated. They know they're losing the fight, so they press forward a little more recklessly as the fight goes on. And they step in, and he is always ready to pop that left hook. As I said, the stance that he's in means he doesn't have to recoil a hell of a lot. He can throw it out quite quickly, and his timing and his power in that hook is insane. Again, it's coming from that chest height angle, so it doesn't come in on a horizontal plane. It comes in at almost like a shovel uppercut at almost a 45-degree angle, and he can find the chin and time it to perfection as you're stepping in. In the UFC, we saw him do this to the likes of Sean Strickland. We saw him use it against Jiří Procházka, Israel Adesanya, and Jamal Hill. They've all been caught and put down by that left hook. What a value for money weapon that has been for Alex Pereira. And as I said earlier, those shots to the body, those teeps to the body, those jabs to the body, they are all used because further down the line, he's going to wait for that moment when you're dropping your hands or when you're retreating, and he's going to try and sneak that left hook in over the top. So all in all, it's a relatively simplistic skill arsenal of weapons that he uses, but the devil is in the details. He is very, very good at timing those weapons or setting the traps that he wants so that you're walking into those weapons. Just an amazing fighter to watch, and he brings that type of excitement when you know he's going to fight. It's like when Anderson Silva or Chuck Liddell or Conor McGregor were lined up to fight. You know that something exciting is going to happen. He is in there to put people's lights out, and he's been successful over and over again. I'm really excited to see what happens for him next. What do you guys think comes next? Does he go to heavyweight? Does he fight John Jones or Tom Aspinall? Does he stay and defend that belt against Magomed Ankalaev? Or is there even a rematch with Israel Adesanya coming further down the line? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Get involved in the discussion. Don't forget to like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, okay? And I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Shama.